Good today. Nice colors. A beautiful day outside, isn't it? Whew. It's even tough coming in here today. So today we're going to a topic I call dial in your believing. If you've not reached your yearly goals by this point, it's time for a believing reset. And if you're not the results that you expected and began to visualize, there must be some interference. Have you ever been on a road trip and we're listening to your radio station and then it begins to fade in and out and you turn the knobs and you try your best to adjust it, but eventually it loses connection with whatever tower and some obscure country song or mariachi band begins to play. I don't know why it's always mariachi. But, our minds are the same way, and it's similar to how our believing mindset works. Our visualization, it's the same thing. Our conviction, it's the same thing. What keeps us dialed in to what we really want to see and what we really want to hear and get out of life? Like I said once before, studies have shown that people over 50 boast a stingy 14% success rate with keeping their yearly goals. That's an 86% rate. And people in their 20s proudly sport a 39% success rate in goal keeping, which is double than us old folks. But it's not a whole lot better, 39%. It's still not good enough for the pros. We need to go professional if we're really going to get professional results. Go to a makeshift dentist. You don't go to we had a kid in our networking group, his hair is sort of wild, and he said, I need to, do you know anybody who can cut my hair? And I said, anybody can cut your hair, just not well, Anybody can give you advice, just not well. Last week we studied visualization, and I was going to continue that today. We'll wait a couple of weeks before I hit that again, because I started looking up, as I studied it more and more, it was great until I looked up visualization, and then I got pushback, and they poo-poo it like crazy because it is, just Google it yourself, and because they believe that it's spiritualism, visualization. Whereas, what's Hebrews 11:1 talking about? What's Ephesians 3:20 talking about? Exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think. So I thought, okay, it's because they're trying so hard not to be like somebody like other religious groups that use the same terminology, that they'll just shut it down. And they don't want their churches or their congregations to even talk about it. Therefore, it even limits Christians more. I was really shocked because I did not expect that. Sure, you can take anything to an extreme. You can take a sport, a hobby, you can take anything, a thought process, and get out of control. Talking about that. We're mature. So let's try to beat this 14% success rate. There's got to be something that's getting in the way of our believing. And so I thought today I'm going to revisit a topic that I've termed dial in our believing, or a believing reset. See, in sports, in baseball, if you can hit, you can play. And while in high school, my son worked at an indoor baseball training center that a few pro baseball Cleveland Indians would frequent for some extra batting practice. And one day, this $10,000 a day hitting coach was there. He had flown in from California, and he was there to wait a couple of the pros from that professional team so he could help diagnose their hitting problem. But until they arrived, he asked my son, "Kid, get on in there and let me watch you do swing." So he swung a few times, and this expert guy watched him. And the coach noticed a few hitches in his swing. And this instructor was a master at finding performance glitches in professional athletes and teaching them how to correct these glitches, hence his hefty fee. And he told my son, you can hit, you can play. And his instruction and encouragement helped my son raise his batting average and elevate his game. And at a game that very night, he hit better than he had all season, just with 5-10 minutes of tweaking. And he went on to play Division I ball. It helped his point the following year. And see, if we can learn to detect and correct our hitches in our believing, the variegation in our visualization, or the cuts in our conviction, then we can finally reach our goals, and with our newfound expertise, we may be able to help others advance well. And now we're going to see this 4-part lesson. It's all in one gospel, that the greatest coach of all time, Jesus Christ, the most observant coach of all time, he helped these guys, he helped them see the hitches in their believing and help them correct it so they become the dynamos that they became after the day of Pentecost. So let's kick off this study now with this 4-part lesson. And he showed his disciples how to notice their believing limiters. Now, it's hard to self-diagnose a believing problem. You know why? Because you believe it. If you're living a certain way, you believe that's the right way to live. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes. Everybody on earth thinks they're right. And that's why it's so limited in how far we've gone. Some people realize, they see far beyond the norm, and they advance in a business or in a country or what have you. Jesus Christ had to get these guys that they pass themselves so they could, in fact, help other people, which we'll get to this. Believing is always a lifestyle. Remember, self-detection of your own believing is difficult. That's why we need each other at times. One person in here says he'd rather people talk to him directly and just tell them exactly what they feel if they feel he's done something wrong, instead of beat around the bush because he wants to better himself. See, these 4 lessons that we're going to cover today took Jesus about 6 or 7 months to go through, to have the right opportunity to teach these things. He saw the hitches in their swing and taught them how to use their power to hit home runs, figuratively speaking. First problem. Now, Jesus identified people's 4 basic believing limiters, and you will find these are exactly the same ones that limit you. 1, financial concerns. 2, health concerns. 3, self-doubt. And 4, catering to one's sex. And these deeply embedded and shamefully buried concerns of wealth, health, doubt, and insecurity have plagued humanity since Adam and Eve. And these are the key believing busters for all humanity. These 4 ingrained problems tie back into the 2 questions which the devil tempted Eve and tempted Jesus Christ. He first challenged their belief system. And then he followed it up, and if you read it yourself, with getting them to focus on these 4 believing: finances, health, self-doubt, and catering to our critics, what others think. And it always worked. That's why it's the same thing that stops us. If we can just understand how we can respond and override these believing busters, these limiters, we too can have greater success in our lives. Early detection. Like a good coach, God made these clogged believing filters simple to find in the Bible. And they're only used 4 times in the Bible, and the term is, "O ye of little faith," or "O you of limited believing." And these are embedded in each record. And you'll see. And these words were only used by Jesus 4 times, and these 4 times highlight one specific lesson of which I just mentioned. And these words were, Jesus is going to show us how to break the barrier of believing busters by recognizing our and following through with the proper steps. And I looked up hitting in baseball. My son was far better than I, but it works in any sport, be it hockey, be it soccer, and the basic 6 steps to hitting. They're said in many ways, but it's coil. It's to get like a spring. You get wound up, you see, and then to step, and then to uncoil, you see, and then to extend, and then to follow through. Golf, anything. Kicking a ball, it's the same thing. It's you get ready, you plant your foot, you step, then you release that energy, then you follow through. It always works. The same thing works with us. You see, we prepare for action. We step toward the problem. You see, we release our energy. We hit our target. You see, then we reach for more. And then we don't stop until we get more than we visualized. That's that whole process with baseball, with hockey, with soccer, with golf, with anything. It's all hammer and a nail. It's the same thing. It works the same in anything in life. See, to dial in our believing, we must, 1, accept our prosperity. I'm just turning it right here. We accept our prosperity. We expect health. We highlight our self-worth, number 3. And number 4, we care less about our critics. The reason I say that last one we're going to get to in a few moments, that last one, once I started reading what all these preachers and theologians said about visualization, it made me second guess what I was teaching. And then I thought, what am I doing? I'm catering to my critics. These guys are just trying to keep people in their churches. Or they just want to hear themselves talk. I want to help people think so they can believe. And if you believe, you receive. That's it. So here we go. Go to Matthew chapter 6. They're all in Matthew. And God made it so easy that all these believing busters, these limiters, are in Matthew. Number 1, accept your prosperity. Now, the 2 top goals of all humanity are to have better health and what? More money. Everybody wants that. Kids want it. They set up little stands trying to sell stuff, and even in our neighborhood. It's crazy. See, Jesus is going to first obviate the fallacy of finance and the myth of money. See, we make it like it's such a hard concept, a hard thing. And it's not designed to be. A few months ago, I was speaking to a struggling business owner. And we started talking about the goodness of God and His promised supply. And he took a step back. And he said, "You're not one of those prosperity guys, are you?" And I remember I was back like, what? Who doesn't want that? But some people don't. They like where they are. They think they're supposed to be poor. We just saw a sign on the way over here. There's somebody on the same corner as last week. And he says, what was he talking about? Money. Do you love money? And I thought, okay, I understand the point he's trying to make. You see, what we put first, but still, it still can limit it because it's not one. You see, you don't want to love money. God already supplied it, which we'll get to. So, even knowing that God's already supplied all our need, we still fixate on the money we don't have. And it's time to turn that frown upside down and accept our prosperity. You see, finances are both the turtle and the world's ultimate goal. He who has the most toys wins. You see the bumper stickers on every other pickup truck, Most toys wins. That's how the world thinks. Matthew chapter 6. And this is the first believing buster that Jesus addressed was finances. And it must be a huge believing barrier. We have to get past this barrier or we'll never get to the next one. And in verse 30, this is really in Jesus' ministry too. Now this identical record is shared in Luke 12, but we're going to stay in Matthew here. It says, wherefore if God so clothed the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? And there's the first one. Now the words little faith should be wimpy and emasculated. That's what he's trying to do here. It doesn't mean tiny or immature believing, it means tiny, immature something else. Think of it as believing that's been neutered. And, veterinarians may say it's hip to snip, you see, but I say we need to grow a set. When it comes to prosperity, you got to be the bull. Just like in the stock market, a bull market is one that's advancing, that's making money. You have to be the bull. You women, you understand. It's all-inclusive, spheroids. And so verse 31, therefore take no thought. Don't take any thought saying, what are we going to eat? Or what are we going to drink? Or wherewith shall we be clothed? For after these things do the Gentiles seek. Everyone wants that stuff. For your heavenly Father knows ye have need of these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. See, it's a mindset of lack that drives men and women to waste valuable years, eking out a living that's already been supplied. Jesus Christ said that unbelievers are the ones who should worry about this. But God made an easier path for us. God made an easy path for everybody, really. Anybody can prosper. So the cure to financial lack from verses 31 through 33, if you read it on your own, it's speak only positives about your finances. Speak only positives about your finances. Remember that God knows your every need. God already knows you need it. Seek your supply. God's got you covered. And you will absolutely receive. It's coil, step, release, connect, extend, follow through. That's our life. It's everything. It's like if you were batting a ball and you stop right when that ball's just going to dribble along. But when you follow through, you see, you go beyond what you really, beyond the contact. And a lot of times we just stop before the follow. And that's not what this is saying. All these things shall be added unto you. You have to follow through. Go through the whole process of believing. So number one, accept your prosperity that God's already supplied. And now number two, expect health. Expect health. I put accept prosperity. Now it's expect health. And the second O ye of little faith section revolves around health. And chapter 8 of Matthew, we're going to be there, is particularly full of lessons on people believing to be healed. His disciples were with him when they saw this. And you're going to see multiple healings, stacked upon healings, stacked other healings, before he really gets to this lesson of, "O ye of little faith." And that's the whole point. That's the words that the lesson surrounds. And verse 1 of Matthew 8, when he was come down, great multitudes followed him. And behold, there came a leper and worshipped him. That means respected him, okay? And saying, "Lord, if thou wilt, then make me clean." And Jesus put forth his hand and touched him and said, "I will. Be thou clean." And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. Seeing this guy going from being deformed, ash white and crusty skin, to totally healed. None of us have a problem that bad. We have problems. But I mean, just think. I think about this is well-tuned, fully mature believing on both the part of Jesus and this leopard. What kind of inner dialogue must have gone on when their eyes met? Jesus saw him fresh skin, baby skin. And he saw himself the same way. Boom. Pow. He's believing. He totally expected to be delivered that day. And Jesus totally expected him to be delivered. Now we're going to see how even an unbeliever can outbelieve the believers. And next, the Roman centurion came up to him and after this happened and asked if Jesus would heal his servant who was paralyzed. And the man didn't feel worthy for Jesus to come into his house. And he just said, "You said, and my servant's going to be healed." And this show of believing totally blew Jesus' mind. Now, verse 10 of chapter 8. When Jesus heard it, he marveled. That's pretty wild. Jesus marveled and said unto them that followed. So he turns around, to the guys walking behind him and says, "Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great believing, no, not in Israel." This guy outbelieved the believers. And I just think, did Jesus go and touch his servant? No. Better rethink healing. Better rethink how big you are or aren't. I mean, it is an amazing thing. It just takes believing. Backed up by the Spirit of God. It's crazy. He was talking to his followers. Simple it can be, folks. We struggle so hard and so long to find our jobs and to regain or to gain health. It's got to be simpler if God promised it. It has to be simple. He'll supply all of our need according to his riches and glory. Now, healing can come from a multi-variegated, and dynamic ways to get healed. That's how God designed us. We're designed to be healthy. See, this man was considered an all-out unbeliever, yet he outbelieved the believers. And right after that, Jesus went to Peter's home in Galilee, and he healed his mother-in-law, who had a bad fever. And I thought how Peter was married, and he was a business owner, yet he took time out of his busy life to learn these life lessons, invaluable lessons that Jesus Christ taught. How much time are we willing to put in to learning the positives of the Word so that we can have the deliverance we want? Would you put a year in? Would you put a month in? Would you put 5 minutes a day in? I mean, how much time are we dedicating to really accomplishing that task? It all revolves around the positives of the Word of God. Jesus left Peter's house as the sun was setting. And the crowd grew exponentially. And now this crowd brought a whole lot of more sick people. Many more sick people. and these possessed people for Jesus to heal. I mean, how would you like that? I mean, it's already been a busy, and now you walk out of this house and there's a bunch of possessoids, and people who are sick or lame or on mats and all that were sick. See, Jesus knew who he was, he knew what he could do, and he believed that the promises of God were possible and plausible and should be expected. Jesus knew knew what verses spoke to him. I ask you, what speaks to you? What speaks to you? You might want to write that down. Put it on your vision board. Carry a 3x5 card in your pocket. Whatever speaks to you to help you that day or that week or that year, hang on to that. Verse 16, when even was come, they brought, I already read that. Verse 17, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, himself took our infirmities and bare our sicknesses. Well, he took them by healing. That's pretty unique where that verse sits in the context there. Now Jesus saw great multitudes about him. He gave commandment to depart to the other side, so other side of the lake. And he requested a boat to get ferried to the other side of the lake, and where there are going to be more people to heal and more people to listen. And the lesson still hasn't popped out yet. This next lesson is going to come at a very dramatic time. Most of life lessons do. And before they got on that boat, one of his disciples, imagine this, you're teaching this stuff, you got a following, you got all these people are with you. I love you, Jesus, you're inspiring me. And one of his disciples told him, asked him for some time off from serving and from learning, from hanging out with him. He wanted to go back home. He wanted his old life back. He wanted to be reinserted into the world's matrix, where he was comfortable. If we want to change, we have to do what? Change. You got to change something to change something. And verse 23, we're going to jump to here. And we see the lead up to this. How do you think that those comments, somebody bowing out right after all that great stuff, could have affected a leader's mind? Oh yeah. You've been on teams where somebody quits in the middle. It's like, we needed you. You've had people leave your church or your ministry or your fellowship, and it's like, what? I don't understand. Well, Jesus had to deal with this right before he hops on this boat. So now they entered this ship. His disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea on this big lake, insomuch that it was covered with waves. Boom, water just crashing in. But he was asleep, which I think is crazy. I mean, he used a lot of energy, so I could see why he was tired. But, usually you wake up if somebody's throwing water on you, right? Waves are crashing into this boat. They're bellying like crazy. And disciples came to him. So it was more than one. I'm sure they didn't all walk to that side of the boat, and then it tilts, And the disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us! We perish! We're going under! We're going to die! We're all going to die. No, I'm sure Jesus Christ could have some real pithy comments. And how could Jesus sleep when death was knocking at the door? It's because he could see nothing but health and safety. He had trained his mind to see nothing but success. He'd see a sick kid. In his mind, he could picture him healthy. I mean, it's a total mindset. Verse 26, and he saith unto them, why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? O you of emasculated believing. Then he arose and he stood up in that wet, damp boat and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. He tells the wind, stop. He tells the sea, stop. And what happened? It stopped. It's calm. And the men marveled. Remember how Jesus marveled at this one guy's believing? You know, I mean, they marveled, saying, what manner of man is this? Even the winds and the sea obey him. It flat out blew their minds. Folks, it's not that Jesus, it's Jesus that can do these things. Say that we can do the same works that he did and greater. See, the only reason we don't see it is because we don't really believe. We haven't trained ourselves to think the positive enough. It's every thought. Healthy. I am prosperous. I can't wait to see how God's going to bless me today. I mean, it's just change vocabulary. Not talking negative after that person walks away from you. It's hard not to do because it's the way of the world. It's the matrix that we get stuck in. You know, that's religion, folks. We have a hitch in our swing. We drop our arm, we do something wrong. See, this is a master coach. A week ago, I walked up to a tree, a 6-foot tree that I planted 3 years ago in my backyard. It's still 6 feet tall. And so I went and I grabbed one of the needles, you know, and I said, either you grow or you go. And then I turned around and walked away, and within 1 week, the thing grew 12 inches. It's crazy. I remember being shocked, you know. And I mean, now it's taller than me. Now it's 7 feet tall. This thing. In 1 week, it grew 12 inches. Josephine saw it. It was like every day, boom, 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 boom. You saw this thing. Now it's taller. And I'm not saying that me talking to that thing is what caused it to grow. It could have been it's time to grow. I don't know. I don't care. Because it was going to grow or it was going to go. You see? Coincidental? I don't know. But why not? Why not try it out? You know, this is not two of 4 coaching points that I'm doing here. After all the healings they'd seen that day, they were still amazed that God would go to such lengths to take care of their physical lives. Lesson number 2, expect health or protection, whatever you want to put in there. Expect it. Totally visualize it. If you hear yourself always talking about your physical problems, stop it. Expect health. Number 3, highlight your self-worth and victories. And this one is insidious because self-doubt is what stops us before we even get started. It's amazing that these guys, after being with Jesus 6 months, were still doing this. Now, an example I've used before is, I was talking about the Mohawk Indians from northern New York and southern Canada, and their renowned ability to walk the high steel. And they helped build all the major buildings in New York City, in greater New York, actually. And in the early 1900s, one of the first Mohawks to do this type of work in New York City was renowned for his ability to walk the high steel. There wasn't anybody better than this guy. But one day he fell to his death. And when interviewed, one of his female family members said, he fell because he got in the way of himself. See, he momentarily lost focus or confidence. You know, he distracted himself. Whatever the case, we'll never know. Something that was second nature to him ceased second nature. See, being positive should be second nature to us. See, he had a momentary believing lapse. He got in the way of himself. And see, negative self-talk is how we get in the way of ourselves. And now we're going to go on another boat trip with Jesus. This guy liked to boat. And Matthew 14. Now we're going for lesson 3. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. Now this record takes longer than these few minutes to fully teach, but I'll do my best. And, what had happened before this verse or this section was they had just fed. Did I not tell you that? Matthew 14, verse 22. So sorry. I lost focus for a minute there, dudes. So he wanted to send these multitudes away. He said, and he told his disciples, get in the boat, go to the other side. And they had just fed that miracle feeding of 5,000 men plus women and children. So maybe 10 to 14,000 people got fed with one child's sack lunch. And all the apostles were the ones to hand this food out. Every time they handed out a piece of bread, another one would appear. Every time they handed a fish, another would appear. It just kept going. And at the end, after the meal, they collected what was left over. There was 12 basketfuls of food left over. They had just done this. It wasn't Jesus that. The apostles handed it out. And it just kept appearing. Now that would be noteworthy, would it not? Watch this. And you'll see a lot of times when the pressure's really on, we revert back to our most base level of thinking. That's where we can change that base by changing the way we think, the way we see things, see ourselves. Important to remember that this was done, that this miracle feeding happened right before they entered the boat. And verse 23, and when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up to a mountain apart to pray. Now, prayer is in many ways visualization. So I don't know what these Christians are talking about, you see. Prayer, what do you do when you pray? You just say words? Or do you picture that person healthy or you getting the thing that you want? It's all about visualization because that is how we control the subconscious and the conscious. And he went up into a mountain apart to pray, and when even was come, he was there alone. But when the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. So it was getting real windy out there. And now that they've been out there, and these guys were still in the center of this lake, or why they were still in the center of the lake is a mystery to me. It doesn't take all night to sail or row either 6 miles or 3 miles. It's like 12 miles long, 7 miles wide, or 6 miles wide. It doesn't take all that much time to do that. Why they were still out there, I don't know. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went, unless the winds were just circling and they just couldn't get anywhere. I've been in a canoe before, by myself canoeing on the Brazos River, and it's sort of in a canyon. And I remember paddling, and all of a sudden the wind started coming straight at me, and it just turned that canoe around on me. And then I'd turn it back around, and I had to really keep it just that bow straight into the wind, and it was hard. I had to get to the next camp, so I had to go against that wind, and it even changed the way that river was flowing, the wind, at least at that moment. So I understand it could be hard work, but it still didn't quite make sense. If they felt like they were in fear of their lives, why didn't they just let it blow to the side and sit it out? Jesus would have understood, but we wouldn't have this lesson either, okay? And the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. Now imagine God just saying, okay, walk out there to him. So, he said, okay. And we all think that's just a crazy thing. But it wasn't just a flat crisp sea like you see in a lot of the cartoons. He was going up and down. He'd see the boat and he'd be walking up and down, water sloshing, beard soaking wet, toga soaked, sandals waterlogged. Unless he was carrying them so they wouldn't get wet, because they were designer sandals maybe. I don't know. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled. I'll say, you were in the Navy. What if you looked overboard and you see a guy just standing there on the water going up and down with the waves? Like, that's crazy. And they said, it's a spirit! And they cried out for fear. These seasoned fishermen, people, most of them raised on the water or around it, they cried out like little schoolgirls. Getting chased by the boys. And straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer. It's I. Be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, if it's really you, ask me to come out and walk on the water with you. And Jesus said, come. The water's fine. Now, I think of Peter, what did he do in his mind? He had to have been able to totally envision himself walking on the water, or he never would have stepped out of that boat. He knows what happens. He's a fisherman. He's raised on the water. So what did this guy do in his mind? He believed what Jesus had been teaching him. And Peter came down out of the boat, out of the ship, and he walked on the water with Jesus. So did he walk on the water? Yes. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. Now, Jesus must not have been very far. He must have got to Jesus. How exciting would that have been? I mean, that's totally a natural realm. This is advanced visualization. It's being able to see yourself doing things that are beyond the senses, beyond the natural, beyond human. But something inside him at that moment, he looked around, he felt the wind, he felt the rain slapping him. He said inside of himself, I can't walk on the water. What am I doing? And what happened? He began to sink. And immediately Jesus stretched forth and caught him, grabbed him by the arm or what have you, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, emasculated believing. Wherefore didst thou doubt? Why did you cut off that vision? It's not hip to snip. Why'd you cut him off? Why'd you cut him off? Wherefore didst thou doubt? And there's number 3 of OU neutered believing. And when they were coming to the ship, the wind ceased, and when they were in the ship, came and they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, had great saying, of a truth, thou art the Son of God. Now, if you read the corresponding gospel records, it says that the moment Peter and Jesus both got back into the boat, the storm stopped immediately, and the boat full of men appeared on the shore. That means it had to move at least 3.5 miles in 1 second. You see why they're like, they're like, they couldn't even believe this. And they said, thou art of a truth, thou art the Son of God. See, there was no great purpose for Peter to walk on the water other than a lesson. There was really no purpose Jesus having to do this. We'll see in just a moment. What was the point of this? Do you think a miracle always has to be there for some grand point? for some great healing, for some big, big thing. Maybe if we practice the miraculous in the minute, then we'll begin to see it in the big. You got to start somewhere. You know, what emasculated their believing? Mark tells us why they stopped the storm on their own. And here's the lesson of the day. See, because it was, oh, thou of little faith, wherefore did thou doubt? Well, I'm going to explain where they doubted. And this is mine. And in Mark chapter 6, you don't need to turn there because we're going to be right back to Matthew. But in 51 and 52, it says, and he went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased. And they were sore amazed at themselves beyond measure and wondered. It's like, what? Because, I mean, all of a sudden they're at land. It's like, well, Jesus totally pictured it being at the land. Had to. I mean, things just don't happen. There's always believing involved. And here's why. 52. This fleshes out the Matthew record. And here's why they could not stop the storm, for they remembered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened. If they'd only remembered what they just fed maybe 14,000 people with one child's sack lunch, they wouldn't have had that problem. They too could have calmed the storm. Like the Mohawk lady said, he must have gotten in the way of himself. Once you tell yourself you can't, you can't. See, the cure for self-doubt is highlight your self-worth. Highlight your victories. Or like I said before, remember to remember. Highlight your self-worth. And only think that. Never, ever, ever, ever think a negative about yourself. Never. Never put yourself down. Never think that you're ugly. Never think you're too big or too small or too shaggy. You know, never think you're never say a negative about yourself. There's enough other people who don't like you. You know? Why would you not want to like yourself? Love yourself. You see, highlight your self-worth. And now the final lesson, and this is a hard one sometimes, especially if you're out front, it's less about your critics. You business owners know what I'm talking about. You ministers know what I'm talking about. Our final, oh ye of little believing, ye of neutered believing section is going to teach us how to overcome the words of our critics. And here we're going to see a record of perceived insecurity that slices to the heart of one believing. Because once you start second guessing yourself, you're lost. You've lost. Wasn't that the first thing the devil told Jesus on the temptation? If you're really the Son of God. Or to Eve. Did God really say this? I'm just saying. When I started looking at what all the Christian ministers were saying, it was like about visualization. It's like, oh God, am I teaching something wrong? You know, and then I thought, no, the whole world. Then I spent about an hour, 2 hours this morning just working my mind with all the verses that talk about vision and prayer and, you know, Hebrews 11. You know, I mean, it's all there. But I had to process it because I began to doubt it. Sounds weird, but we all go through it. You know, here we see a record of that perceived insecurity. In Matthew 16, we're going to finish up here. And in verse 5, when his disciples were come to the other side, they had forgotten to take bread. Here's the third record of when they're being on the water. So it's pretty wild. Three times. Because it's usually, well, it can be a very good time, but if anything happens, it can be quite dramatic. Plus, you're alone. It's peaceful. Now, there's no storm this time. But the storm was inside. It's an internal storm that we got to learn to calm. And you can calm your internal storm just like he said, stop, see? Stop, wind. We can calm that too. We have to learn to do that. And it says, when the disciples were come to the other side, verse 5 of Matthew 16, they had forgotten to take bread. Okay. This is weeks or months after that last time, okay? This is the final, oh, ye of little faith. And once again, they'd failed to prepare properly and had not brought any food on the trip. Now remember, all fellowship basically revolved around eating. So for them to forget, they were just totally, they weren't thinking. They were just following, and Jesus Christ was expecting them to do certain things, but this time they forgot to bring bread. Now, he redirects their thoughts to something totally different, and he changes the subject to set up the lesson. Jesus Christ was way ahead of these guys. Now, he didn't point out that they'd forgotten bread. It just says a comment on verse 5, they came to the other side, they had forgotten to take bread. God just makes a statement of fact here. And verse 6, Jesus said unto them, take heed, and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. Okay, he just makes this comment. Before we get out of the boat, guys, beware. Beware. Take heed. Keep your eyes open. Be aware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Those are words. They're going to cause you to unrest, to bubble up inside, to grow in a way that you wouldn't normally grow, to misshape your believing. Beware of the leaven. And these were their critics. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, it's because we have no bread that Jesus is saying this stuff. He never said anything about them forgetting bread, which when Jesus perceived, when he realized they were asking each other, Peter, you think it's because we didn't take any bread? I don't know, John. What do you think, James? Why did he say this comment? He's right there. I love how these guys just talk like Jesus didn't even exist sometimes. When he perceived, he said unto them, oh, ye of little faith, of neutered believing. Why reason ye among yourselves? Why are you talking like this? Because he brought no bread. What's up with that? That's nothing. Do ye not yet understand? Neither remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many baskets ye took up? Now, this is the second time Jesus Christ uses this miracle feeding example to help them remember. Verse 10, neither the 7 loaves of the 4,000 baskets he took up. So it happened twice, these miracle feedings. How is it that ye do not understand that I spake it not to you concerning bread, that ye should be aware of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees? Then they understood how that he bade them not beware of the leaven of bread. It's not the kind of bread. It's just religion. But of the doctrine of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. Now, weren't those the leaders? Yeah. What I read yesterday was a bunch of Christian leaders that are poo-pooing this idea of being able to picture things that you want. See, this is the final lesson on our believing busters. And this is how you take back the power from those who once used it to control you. You watch TV and you hear these people talk, these talking heads about politics. And then you start thinking, oh my, our country's going under. Taxes are going to go up and this and that. And you start talking to your heart. It just melts it. Why not talk? We have a great country. We're going to prosper like crazy. We can have no matter what the heck happens in this blessed land. I mean, it's just a switch of focus. Or what an old pastor or preacher or minister once told you. It doesn't mean it's right. Beware of the leaven of the leaders. They're always the ones who are going to get used. You see, take back the power, folks. Care less about your critics. They could care less about you. They care less about you. Why do you care what they think? Take back your power. And so in summary, this "O ye of little believing," neutered believing, emasculated believing, whatever you want to say. See, the devil exposes man's weakness to manipulate and enslave him with hopelessness. I guess this is just my life. I'm going to be poor. I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be lonely. Whatever our thing. You see, the devil thinks it's hip to snip. You see, and if you reduce your virility, you reduce your impact. We need to be, virile Christians, men and women, like God designed us to be. We need to do those crazy, cool things, but it starts with doing crazy, small things and training ourselves to think or what not to think. See, Jesus eliminated the believing limits to show the disciples how to build their path to ultimate freedom. See, Jesus identified people's 4 basic believing limiters: financial concerns, early in the ministry, one of the biggest. It's what you talk about more than anything, probably, is your job or more money or your savings or something. Health concerns. 2. 3, self-doubt, that little dialogue that goes on inside of us all day long. Get control of that. And 4, catering to our critics. Those are the basic limiters. See, to dial in our believing, we must, 1, accept our prosperity. It's already been given. Expect our health. Highlight our self-worth. The things that we've done. Highlight that. That becomes paramount in our lives. Remember great things you've done and God's done for you. And number 4, care less about the critics. Don't let anybody take away who you know you are in Christ. It's just like that batting coach said, if you can hit, you can play. And I was thinking of Corliss, prepare for action. To step toward the problem. You see, uncoil, release that energy. You see, and then connect. You hit your target, and then extend. And then you follow through. You see, going all the way, or you'll never have the power. It's not just touching what you want, it's going way past it. I know when I took certain types of karate, they'd say, punch the person. You're not just trying to punch them, you think about punching their back through their front. And that's how you have to think. It's sort of weird, but it's still follow through. You follow through. The Mohawk woman said, don't get in the way of yourself. Instead of, oh, you of little faith or neutered believing, let's be fully mature, 100% virile Christians, free-ranging Christians, no walls, no barriers, no limits. Instead of allowing our believing to be emasculated, snip. You see, swagger down the street, knowing our worth and acting like it. Let's dial in our believing. Let's accept our prosperity, expect health, highlight our self and highlight our victories, and care less about our critics. You have heap big believing. God bless.